I know I talk primarily about Baldur's Gate 3 in regards to how corrupt the Game Awards 2023 ended up being, but I think we can't forget the elephant in the room. Alan Wake 2, a game that nobody cared about, nobody bought, nobody was talking about at all, even less than Baldur's Gate 3, how that game was like shoved to the forefront. Like, I think it won like more awards than anything else in that show, even though Baldur's Gate 3 was given the game of the year. Alan Wake 2 was right there, like competing alongside it. It was ridiculous seeing people try to pretend this game was some revolutionary thing. And I do think it's coming out more and more. It's becoming more and more obvious just what a disaster Alan Wake 2 actually was, right? I'm seeing reports that like Epic paid for like the full development of the game and like it had full Epic exclusivity and like it sold like nothing at launch. Like to me, this was like the ESG product, right? Baldur's Gate 3 was like obviously disgustingly woke, but I think Alan Wake 2 was like kind of their Life is Strange kind of thing, where like something that's like unapologetically woke, unabashedly woke. The thing that's like supposed to be like the most extreme woke thing in the industry, right? And that's why so many people like rallied behind it. You can kind of see this like with other games in the industry, some other developers, Hades 2, I think is something that a lot of people have picked up on recently as being a woke product that people are only enabling because like, oh, it's made by Supergiant Games, the one of the worst indie games studios of all time. A studio that adheres to game journalist propaganda and the like, right? Like again, people are beginning to notice the double standard, right? And I think Alan Wake 2 is a really blatant example of just like how this kind of uh, success isn't like a real success story, right? Like these games are astroturfed, right? I know I use that term a lot, and because I am really trying to beat it into your head that it is true. That like game journals are taking games that fulfill their agenda, fulfill the propaganda, like are pushing the narrative, right? They're taking these things and they are trying to make them popular. They are trying to like influence gamer culture. They're trying to be huge things. It's really disgusting. Like how many sequels Life is Strange has gotten. Right? It's really disgusting seeing how many people like try to pretend these are like narrative masterpieces when in reality they're just complete garbage. And I'm sure Alan Wake 2 is no different. I haven't looked into the game at all. Right? I know nothing about it, but the reality is, if like nobody else does either, right? That's the thing. Is the Game Awards as of 2023? I'm sure this, like to a certain extent, this has always been true, but the Game Awards for 2023 have essentially become the Oscars, in which they are venerating games that nobody has played, nobody has cared about for political reasons. And Alan Wake 2 did accept the sweet baby money. They do have like the ESG system. They do have like DEI. Like they are like the stereotypical example of everything wrong with the Western gaming sphere at this point. But I'm very curious to see what the future for this company actually is, because when Control came out, people just kind of like uh, wrote it off and ignored it. But I suppose that was like a taste of what's to come, right? I suppose like they were just getting the ESG system established and like starting to support these kind of developers and stuff like that. And now that the ESG system has been exposed, now that there's been backlash from the investors, now that there's like, more mainstream knowledge of what's going on, now that like Pokemon Go fans are rioting, right? Now that like more and more people are like waking up to these kind of problems, like I don't think Alan Wake 2 was able to get away with the same kind of nonsense that Life is Strange did, right? Like the reality is people are becoming tired of woke shit. People are beginning to realize that this idea that white culture is bad, that Christianity is evil, that like America is evil, that um like that narrative is entirely falling apart. Like no matter how much like the public schools and like the government try to push it, like the reality is more and more people are becoming aware that this is propaganda. And so when they see something like Alan Wake 2, when they see like the obvious signs of subversion and like woke culture, like they just straight up reject it. Like they don't even have to play the game. I reminded like very strongly, like this is an example I think of when talking about like rejecting woke stuff. I remember seeing like some hour long like multi-hour long like rebuttal of Buzz Lightyear, right? The CG movie that came out recently that everybody hated because it was so stupid. Like I saw like this guy, like this wokey, like he tried like coming out, like this multi-long video. He's just like, if you come here expecting me to criticize the lesbian kiss in this movie, you can sign off now. You can stop watching the video because I won't be doing that. And I had this realization when that happened. That moment is all you have to see to understand the quality of what you're dealing with. Like that's it. I don't have to watch your shitty like multi-hour long YouTube video essay on like why Lightyear fundamentally doesn't work because I seen that one image. Right? I know what Disney is like. I know what Pixar is like. I know what the executives are like. I know what the shareholders are doing right now. Why would I ever sit there and like watch a multi-long hour long video on a movie that I have no intention of seeing, that I know is woke? And this is why the propaganda will never ever work, because the vast majority of the audience has begun to catch on to what the establishment is trying to do. Like in the 90s, when you would have like Forrest Gump try to like pretend that Jenny was like a good person who eventually came around and eventually embraced Forrest and let her raise their son. Yeah, their son. Like, you know, the movie tries really hard to pretend that Jenny is like fundamentally a good person and that like Forrest is based for waiting for her, when in reality that's terrible advice. Like terrible. Like people don't think about it in that context, but that was woke, right? That was an issue. You know, you just have countless examples of things like that throughout the years. You know, I talked a lot about Starship Troopers recently. You know, I've been reading the book on my Amazon Fire Pro tablet. You know, I've been reading the book, and like when you read the book, when you understand that Paul von Vorhaven is a fucking retard who doesn't understand what the book is trying to say, like you understand that like Starship Troopers, like the movie, is one of the worst things produced in cinema, right? It was a blatant attempt at demonizing like certain values, right? And people don't like to admit that's true because, oh man, look, it's nothing but bug killing action. But those people are low IQ retards. Right? And again, like people used to defend this kind of stuff. Like, oh, it's just in good fun. Oh, just accept like people think about things differently than you. But we're at the point now, I think, where people are realizing how this kind of mindset is dangerous. Okay? Like how this kind of mindset is leading people to believe things about the world, about other people, about certain cultures, about relationships, religion, politics, general culture. Like it is the economy. Like, you know, it is legit giving people the wrong idea on how things actually work. And plenty of people like figure it out eventually, you know, like I did, right? But the reality is, plenty of people don't, or like are unwilling to. And that's kind of like where we're at right now. Like we're slowly seeing people like be forced to take the red pill, right? Like people are like they're trying to spit it back out, but like people are like you know, the society is just shoving it down their throats. You know, like their body is just straight up rejecting it. Like they can't handle the reality of the situation. Like they put on like the lay live glasses and they just start seeing the truth, and then they just go like, the glasses are a lie, but in reality it's their entire worldview that's a lie, right? The presentation fed to them by communist Hollywood is a lie, and it always has been, right? And people are slowly beginning to wake up to that fact, right? Slowly, and it's going to be really interesting seeing like what's going to happen in the gaming sphere going forward because people were willing to go along with like the Game Awards 2023 just despite Nintendo. Like I think that's the only reason why. Like people didn't want to give like the Tears of the Kingdom or Super Mario Bros. Wonder any credibility at all. So they were perfectly fine with like promoting woke shit over it. Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, like uh Baldur's Gate 3, like they were trying desperately to downplay Nintendo's successes that year. But like that's not going to work. Tears of the Kingdom is still popular and talked about. I still see people like trying to downplay Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but that's obviously not going to stick. So much so that I don't think we're going to see a repeat of what happened with the new Super Mario Bros. Games, where people genuinely managed to convince the masses that those games were disappointing, when in reality they are excellent, right? Like we're already seeing like a rejection of woke culture all around us, and yet you're seeing people like sit there and try to like gloom and doom about properties that were never good anyway. Tomb Raider and Warhammer 40K and Marvel. Like who gives a fuck? Star Wars? Like who cares? Like there's way too much good stuff to watch, read, and play that you don't need to be upset about your favorite brands like going downhill. Like all you would have to do theoretically is just stop consuming the product. That's it. And yet you're seeing like a very strong dedicated audience of people who just kind of refuse to do that, honestly. Like for me personally, I will always be an advocate for like live your best life, don't revolve your life around entertainment, like do things outside of this sphere. And yeah, I think that in and of itself is a major reason why I have never been and never will be all that badly affected by woke nonsense.